Well, Chiara, thank you so much for being here with me on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. I am thrilled to have you here because you're going to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about and I've spoken a lot about in the future, but having you as an expert here is really, really thrilling. And I'm so glad that you're here to share this with the audience. Before we get there, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yes, thank you, Henriette, first for having me here. It's really a pleasure to work together. So my name is Chiara and I live in Sweden, but I'm originally Italian. And I have been working for corporate America type of work for the last 20 years, and mainly in innovation and consumer insight and strategy. And only recently I started my own endeavor and leaving corporate world behind and start being a leadership coach and innovation strategy. And yes, here I am.
Oh my gosh. And what I love about your kind of story is all of that has happened with you in corporate. And we're going to talk about, and you're going to tell us your story in a minute, but everything and all the lessons that you build up while working in corporate, you're now using that and incorporating that in your own business. So for those of you listening, obviously we're going to talk about validating your product today. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. Before you spend lots of money, before you go crazy and spend lots of time getting a product done and putting it out there, hoping people would buy it, you're going to have to validate your product first. So that's why I've got Chiara here today. But Chiara, tell me first, because obviously I know you said you were in corporate before. What made you decide to change your mind and go, listen, I'm going to leave corporate, start my own business?
Yeah, so the reality is that I really wanted to have a bigger impact. I had a period of down and up in the working career, and I thought, I really want to have a bigger impact in this world. I really think there is a better way to work in corporate. We don't need to be miserable. We don't need to hate our job. How do we regain control of our job? How do we stop being yes man and just doing things that our bosses ask us to do, and helping other professionals really regaining their control, regaining their strengths, and really being the best self every day of their life, both at work and in life. I don't want to see any more corporate people being compromising and never being home for dinner, and the wives home and taking care of the house and the kids. I think this is an unbalanced world of the corporate world, corporate life, and I'm really in a mission to change that. Little by little, corporate person by corporate person, I'm going to be making an impact in this world. And in corporate, when I was in a corporate role, I couldn't have this wide impact. I could only influence my sphere of direct connections, and that was not enough for me. So this is why I decided to embrace this new adventure.
Oh my gosh. And I love the fact that you just took that jump. You just decided, listen, I need for something to change, and this is what I'm going to do. So tell me a little bit about you now as a coach. What is it that you're doing now, and who are you really helping now?
So I'm helping actually some of my ex-colleagues. Those are the first people that reached out to me and I reached out to, and we're taking them on a journey. I believe that I know that change is really hard. And for me, coaching is about making progress one coaching session at a time, and then you being able to self-coach yourself. So I give exercises to my coaching, to my clients, for them to really train day after day to get used to change. Change is uncomfortable, but change is the only way we grow through change. So if we need to get accustomed to being uncomfortable, we need to be accustomed to, to have bigger objectives, bigger goals. I always say we can't stay still. Stagnating with us stinks. So we can't stay still. Let's move. Let's have this flow going so that we can really become the better version of ourselves, the next version of ourselves. And it goes through growth. So this is what I do. I help people. For the time being, I'm helping mainly professionals in the corporate world, but I'm also helping people that want to leave corporate world. First, to get the clarity. Are you really sure that's the career you wanna embrace? Are you really sure you're ready to leave corporate job, which is comfortable, right? You get your salary at the end of the month. Everything is safe. You don't need to worry about getting your client, your customers. versus the corporate job, entrepreneurial job that you think, that might be better for me. But the reality is that people only see the glittering part of that entrepreneurial side. They don't understand that you really need to have a bigger motivation, a bigger purpose to be able to stick to that in the long run. So I help them really getting clarity on what do they want, and making sure that what they want, they can't get from their corporate world, from their life today. And so really training and coaching people to understand that they have all the answers within them. And it's just about taking them out, not waiting for your job to make you happy, not waiting for your husband or your partner to make you happy. That's really something that we are responsible for. And how do we get that control over it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have said it better myself. Just the fact that we know that we've got that control, but sometimes people don't know they've got that control. And I love the fact that you're just helping them, seeing that, but then obviously take them on that journey. Now, your expertise while you were working in corporate in particular is in consumer insights and innovation. Did I say that? Innovation management. And this segues brilliantly into what we're going to talk about, which is all about before you create products, you got to validate them, to put it in simple terms. So talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us about what you've seen people sometimes do. And then obviously talk to us about the tips as how to correct that and how to make sure that people can't, avoid making those kind of mistakes, really.
Yes, absolutely. So the temptation is that the first mistake, or slight mistake that people do, is that they fall in love with their idea, and it becomes their baby. And if it becomes their baby, of course, we have an expression in Italian that says every ugly baby is beautiful to their moms, because unfortunately we're very biased, right? So you need to be very detached to your baby until you really know that there is a customer ready to buy that. So the idea is to really being as distanciated from the product, from your solution as possible, and really being still very open-minded to pivot it and to change it, to adapt it, because we exist because of our customers. We exist because of our clients. We need to have, every business should have the objective not to make money, but to serve the customer. So you are not the one that needs to be in love with your product. It's your customers, your clients. So you need to change that perspective. And until you're hitting something that you're sure that at least a certain amount of people is going to be ready and is going to be jumping on your product, you can't settle. You can't think you got there. So that's really the first thing we need to be very careful about. The other thing is also, again, if you want to serve somebody, you need to know who that somebody is, right? So how do we identify what other people call the ideal customer avatar, the ICA? How do we define that typical customer, typical client of yours? And really, you need to be as specific as possible. You probably have heard of creating a persona. Well, that persona, you really need to bring it to life. And sometimes what I do is actually I use real people. I use that person, he or she really needs that my product. So I give them a name, I give them a story, I give them a life, a present, a future, and a past. And by having that person in front of me when I develop a product, I know that I'm doing something right. Now, the risk is that, of course, the people that are not that person might feel, well, I'm not addressed. And you need to go through that risk, because you need to please somebody. And usually you need to go quite extreme. It's better to go to extreme rather than taking an average person that has, nothing really peculiar. Because everybody else will follow. If you have something that really is strong with a specific customer avatar, the others will follow. But just be focused, create your avatar, and start talking to them.
Yeah. And I can completely relate to that. Apologies to interrupt you. I can completely relate to that because in particular, when I started my business, I had this idea and I fell in love with my idea of creating an online course. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but I spent 6 months creating that course. And I finally put it out there and I had crickets. Nobody bought it. And it was the biggest eye opener for me in particular, because number one, didn't know who my ICA was. Number two, I just fell in love with my idea, wasted so much time creating the course and didn't even think about the fact of validating it, making sure that that's what people really want. So that was a big learning curve for me. So I love what you're saying. And that's why I am so much into the idea of before you create something, you've got to validate it first.
I can tell you, you're not alone. I know a lot of people do that mistake. The other thing is also, I hear a lot of people doing bad market research. And that is even more disastrous, because then you feel like, oh, I checked all the boxes. I've done that. So now I'm good to go. So the first thing that I see all the time people doing is asking people for intention. Are you going to buy that? And I always say, look, don't do that. Don't ask people to project themselves to the future. Ask them if they bought it yesterday. Did they buy something? Did they bought something similar last year? Then you get something that is interesting. But never ask intention to buy projected. That doesn't help. That doesn't give you any feedback. That answer is either they're trying to please you, oh, they really don't know. Sometimes I feel like I see a lot of people also saying, when we were doing consumer insider interviews, we hear people saying, oh, I like to try new things. And then I always challenge them and I say, okay, when was the last time you bought a new yogurt? Right? Because we go into the store and we buy all the 10 same things that we buy every day. So people tell you, and they really think they believe it when they say, when they tell you this thing. But the reality is not, it doesn't reflect in their actions. So when they go and buy things, they're buying the same things. So the fact that we all want to buy new things is not true. It needs to be a clear need, and you really need to stress the need, and then you can develop a product that makes sense for them. So clearly, making sure you're not asking questions to project themselves to the future, but you're asking things about the past behaviors. Did they buy a subscription to a gym in January, in April, or in May, or they never bought it? Did they behave in this way or in that way? So really making sure that you are getting actionable insight, that you're getting really answers to things. And the other thing is also, there's this famous confirmation bias. You need to go into an interview with somebody asking questions without the hope and the dream that they're going to answer the way you want them to answer, because this is going to make you a very bad listener. You're just going to pick on the things you want to pick on, and you're going to completely ignore all the other information that those guys are giving you for free. So don't do that. Yeah. That's why you need to do this active listening. Ask open-ended questions. Avoid the questions that you ask with yes, that can be answered with yes and no. So really try to be as open as possible with the questions. And also making sure that you're going there without prejudice. Really go in, as I say, listen to understand. Don't listen to answer. Don't listen to get feedback on the things that you're really just looking for.
Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly recap here, because the first thing that you obviously said, which is really important, is when you go out there and you want to develop a product or a service in particular, is obviously you need to think about who your ICA is. And you made it very clear. And I know for so many of the listeners, you're listening to this and you go, yeah, I know, I need to know who my ICA is. And you've heard it numerous times from so many people before. But this is absolutely key. You have to know who that ideal client or customer is that you really want to work with. And you honestly have to create that persona for about them, so you know who you're talking to. Now, the other thing you said as well is obviously, it's kind of like the temptation to attract everyone. And I think we all go through those phases when you start a business, because it's kind of like a mindset thing as well, where you think like, but if I don't get everybody who wants to buy my product, nobody's going to want to buy it. And it can help everybody. And I'm sure you've heard people say that as well.
Absolutely, exactly. Because the temptation is that you think like, well, my product serves that person and serves that person and serves that person. And so you tend to develop something that tries to please and answer everybody. And you can do it later on by creating testimonials where you have different stories that will prove that your product is right. But when you develop a solution, the more your niche is narrow, the more you're very specific about who you're serving, the better. And don't be afraid. I mean, we are 6-7 billion people in this world. There's going to be enough people that have that specific personality and characteristic that you can serve. So you don't need to select 5 different avatars. Go with one and be focused.
Yeah, exactly. And as your business grows and develops, obviously, then you can start spreading out a little bit, and then you can start having different ICAs. But if you're starting out, always just start with one ICA and just focus on that person. And also the other thing is once you know who that ICA is, that's where you start talking their language. That's where you're really connecting with them. And that's where the clients come from, and obviously them telling you what they really want, and you can develop a product or a service to help them. But there's something else that you said there, which, you know, I'm really fascinated with, and I love this, is just to learn to listen. And you said something before we started the recording. You said it so well, and I wish actually we started recording earlier so I could capture it. But if you could please rephrase that, because people need to learn to listen, but they listen for a certain reason.
Yes, so they need to listen to understand, not listen to answer.
Yes.
Because this is really what we're trained at school and everywhere in our lives. We listen, but we only listen 20% of what they say, and we're already preparing our answers. So we don't really listen with open question, with open mind, and really curious. So the word curiosity is really key here. You have to go inside, like you're a kid of 5 years old and it still doesn't know anything about that person or that need, and therefore you need to go really with an open-minded. You need to think that this person has something to teach you, and you're there to learn from them. So that's why, you know, the best thing is also really to go there and train yourself to don't say anything until the person really you think has said everything they have to say, and really ask them, probe them, tell me more about it. Or can you elaborate even more, you know? And also the other thing we need to be careful is not to ask questions like why, because the why question is really interesting. It really puts you in a rational mode. And then as a respondent, you feel like you need to justify what you just said. And that we don't want that, because then they go into processing that it's not natural. We don't do that. We don't always ask ourselves, oh, why did I take this glass of water? You know, we don't do that. So don't ask those questions. Really making sure there's more the when, the what, and the tell me more, and the how, and really making sure that the person feels you're there to listen, not to get, you know, clear just a yes or no and quick feedback that they don't get a value from.
Yeah. And this is something that I've learned as well as a business coach is that kind of fine art of listening, in order to not to give advice in a sense where you're just, how can I say this? I'm going to retrack a little bit. Sometimes people listen, exactly like you said, and they are already making assumptions up in their head as to what this person is going, or where this person is going with what they're saying. So you're already making up the answers to what you want to say back to this person in order to help them. And that's fair enough. We're all creatures of habit, and we all want to help other people because we think that we've got the answer for them. But as a coach, this is one thing that I've learned is every single person, like you said yourself, they've actually got the answers within themselves. So when we coach people, that fine art of listening and asking the right questions, they will always find the answers themselves. So I just love that you brought that in there, because in addition to obviously validating a product, you're going to get those answers from your potential customer or from the person that you're talking to, because they're going to tell you exactly what it is that they need, and you'll be able to provide that service for them when the time is right.
And I love what also you said earlier, which is about they giving you the language. This is the most important thing. I used to really write down all the transcript of people talking, because then you can use the same wording that they use, not your wordings. So they will recognize their needs into your product definition. So it's really important to listen so carefully to every word they're using, every word they're expressing, and what they're meaning with that word. So extremely important. So the other thing is about product validation is it's really about going into a pre-launch phase. So what I mean here is that you really need to make sure that when you ask the questions, do you want to buy? Yeah, which everybody wants to know the answer to. You only do that if you have a click box where they can click and buy it then. So only that buying intent matters. Everybody else that told you, yes, I want to buy it, but did not click on that button, did not pre-purchase your product, that's not true that they want to buy. There's something there, they're not convinced. And I think, as we know, we also need to make sure that we're building the trust before we try to sell something to somebody.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I feel like sometimes if people reach out in the first contact, they already want me to open the wallet and pay 1,500 euros, or I'm like, well, hold on a second, who are you? Why would I buy from you? And this is one of the criteria that I have in the freebie, which we're going to talk about later on, which is your credibility. So establishing your credibility with your customer is something that you really need to go through the journey. So maybe they don't want to buy, not because the product is not valid, but maybe it's because you don't have yet the credibility for them. You don't have the trust of them that they will buy from you. So you also need to make sure that when you're validating with your customers, you're validating in the right stage of your customer journey. So don't do it in the first email, don't do it in a second email. Build the trust, build your list, communicate continuously with them, and only after a certain amount of time, when you see that there is engagement, then is where you can really start asking, well, would you buy that from me?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important, because I always talk about the relationship strategy, where if you really have a good relationship strategy, where you really communicate with your audience, and again, listen, very important. But that's where, once you start selling your product or your service, it's actually not a sales pitch. It's really just a conversation where you're having a conversation and people turn around and say, that's amazing. How can I work with you? Or yeah, sign me up. And that's how easy selling really can be. But you can't get to that stage unless you have that relationship. And the same with the pre-launch. I mean, you've got to build a relationship with people first before you pre-launch your product. And I think that is so important. Talk to me a little bit about the pre-launch, because I know there are so many facets of it. So say, for instance, I know so many of my listeners are thinking, I want to create a service, I want to create an online course or things like that. Talk to me a little bit about the pre-launch, because this is where things get really exciting. And I think the audience sometimes get a little bit confused as to what a pre-launch is.
Yes. So for me, pre-launch and validation, in fact, are basically, kind of go hand in hand, because there is, you gathered your insight, and you heard about you listen to your consumers, you listen to your customers, and you understand what type of product and which direction you want to go. So then you developed a product description, and you start testing that. And that is part of your pre-launch, because at the end of the product description, you will have a get access, immediate access, buy here. So, and what you do though also is that then you send them a form to fill in and ask them feedback. Because this is why you're doing the validation. So that's part of the validation. That's why the story a little bit overlapping with each other. So you send them the the product description to read through, and then you ask them, please fill in this form and give me feedback. One of the questions is, would you buy that? Yes or no? And the other question is, what do you love about this product? What questions do you have? And what you would add, if anything? Where is it that you have more doubt? And that's it. It needs to be very short. I use Google Form for that purpose. So you need to buy expensive thing. You just send them a link. And then what you do is that you use those questions that the people have to fill in your Q&A in your product description. You can, of course, use it also to fine-tune your product description, but you also really use those questions that they have to fill in your Q&A section at the end of your product description. So all those people that in your form, in your Google form, have answered, yes, I want to buy, to those people, you send them a pre-launch request, a pre-purchase request. I'm going to launch this product later in summer or later in autumn. Get access immediate for this convenient price by just clicking to this link. So that's really your pre-launch. You're only doing it with the people that you know have already expressed interest in your product. So that's really what you need to do at this phase.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so interesting, because what I've seen people do as well is they kind of sell what they call a pre-launch, and when the audience has already come back and they're obviously saying, listen, you've asked for this is what I'm preparing, and here's a pre-launch. And then what they do with pre-launches as well is they reduce the price. So they say, for the pre-launch, as a founding member, basically you're going to get it at X price, but when I launch it again, it will be at the normal price of whatever. So people almost find like, oh, okay, because this is still in that beta phase, still being tested, I'm going to get it at a discounted price. So I'd rather want to try it out now rather than thinking of buying it later on when it's, at its normal price. So that kind of is a little bit of a way as well, where people realize It's still in a test phase, so it's not going to be perfect, but at least I'm getting it at a lower price. And I think that's also very important. When you do a pre-launch, you have to tell the people that it is still in a testing phase, it's a beta phase, it is a pre-launch, so people don't feel like you're lying to them, so to speak.
Absolutely. So you need to I also call it the founding member launch, like a grandfather. You're coming into this product as a grandfather, and you're going to help shaping it as well. That's why you're getting this price, which is really advantageous. And what you can also do is maybe add a bonus. So, for example, I add like a 1 hour coaching session included specifically for you, depending on, of course, what the product it is. But, really to entice them, because again, those are the people that told you they want to buy it. So you just need them to give them that little excuse for you to really, for them really to push that button and buy from you. So it really helps. And so the thing is that in the product validation, you should try, depending on how many people you're asking, but you're aiming for a 10% conversion. So you're aiming for only 10%. So if you asked 40 people and 4 say, yes, I'm going to buy, you're good to go. You don't need 100% of people telling you that they want to buy. You're just validating really with at least 10%, which is 4 people. I asked that in statistics, so I can tell you it's correct. but it's really, you don't really need a lot of people, but at least you need to have somebody that is intended to buy. Now, you need to adjust the 10% depending on your price point. So if your product is really expensive, you might be happy also with 5-7%. And if your product is very cheap, you might want to increase the percentage maybe to 20% if you're selling something for 29 euros or dollars. But otherwise, as a rule of thumb, 10% of conversion of people that say, yes, I'm going to buy, is all you need for you to go to the next level and start building the product.
Oh my gosh. And I just love the fact that you're saying it, because it just reiterates everything that I've always been trying to tell my audience about. Validate your product before you put it out there. And also the other thing is it's going to help you not spend a lot of money. Oh my gosh, hands up. How much money did I spend when I created that first online course? I had no clue what I was doing. I was buying platform after platform after platform, thinking that this new platform is going to help me solve my problem, and this platform is going to help me solve my problem. And I spend a good fortune, don't tell my husband, I spent a good fortune on so many platforms, only to realize at the end of the day, I only needed one. So lesson learned there, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And it's so tempting, because we're generous people. We want to serve our customers and really believe that we have something that they want. But the problem is that even if the product, it doesn't mean that your product wasn't right. It might be that the way, maybe the consumer wasn't ready, the client wasn't ready. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they talk about the difference between, when your kid starts screaming and my boy hurts his elbow, and the first thing he asks is a plaster. And you know that the plaster won't help, but you need to give them the plaster before you go to the next level and say, well, now we can put maybe a little bit of ice in there on the top of your elbow, because the plaster is not going to help. But first they need a plaster. And that's really something we need to start thinking about our customers, our avatar. What is the plaster? How do I help this person first, which he or she thinks they need, before they're ready to buy the bigger thing, which is really what they need, but they don't see it today. So it's really a journey, and a journey you need to do with your customers. Answer them, serve them something smaller first, to then give them the bigger promise and the bigger solutions later. But go with them on the journey. And the other thing, I'm sure you've spoken in this podcast a lot about it before, is about you having your email list, because that goes back to your credibility. If you don't have an email list, I'm sorry to say, but if you're just putting an ad and spend a lot of money on Facebook, yeah, if you sell for something for $9, but you probably need to spend $200 to get there. The math is not going to go to in your own favor. It's not going to be a lot of profit at the end of the selling process. So you really need to make sure that you have a custom base, that you have a subscriber list, that you are engaging with them, that you get feedback from them back and forth. Ask them questions in your emails, see if they respond. My subscribers don't respond a lot. I don't know about yours, but I really try, because I know takes time. It takes time for them to feel comfortable to reply to my emails. So that's normal. Take the time. Don't rush. This is something really you need to also embed in your thinking process. So don't start too early building your product until you have a subscriber list. And you don't need a 10,000 people subscriber list. You can start with a few hundreds, but you need to start there before you can really start developing your product.
Exactly, because that also walks hand in hand with what we said earlier on. You can start building that relationship with the people on your email list, and also, oh my gosh, when you have people on that email list, you can start communicating with them and start asking them questions and use them almost as of finding out what do they need. Can you build this product in order to help them? And then at that point, then once you're ready, you can say, okay, I'm going to pre-launch it. So your email list is always the first place you would have to go to. I know so many people don't have an email list and they just go and spend fortunes on Facebook ads, but they've never built a relationship with those people that's coming, as cold traffic basically to them. And I've seen that mistake as well. So I agree with you. Email list is definitely one of the things you need to start with before even start developing a product or a service.
And I want to pick on one thing you just said, because it's about understanding the needs of your customer. And I think more and more people now realize that people don't understand that they have needs, but they can tell you what problems they have.
Yeah.
So the best way is really to start identify what are the pain points. But again, people are very they're very shy and they think very well of themselves. So they're not going to be just telling you openly what their problems are in this way. So you just need them to tell you their story. So you need to put yourself in a situation where you listen. So there is a lot of platforms. You can go to any Facebook groups and see what where your avatar is, and you really read the questions they're asking there, which clearly indicates there's something that they're struggling with. You can go to Quora, although I don't always find solutions there, but there is that platform as well. You can go to Google, but I really think Facebook groups is actually a fantastic source of information of what people are asking, what people are talking about, because then you need to start saying, okay, that is something I can elaborate more. I can ask you questions there as well and see what the people are answering. So really don't look for expressed needs, because your product might solve something that is not expressed. It doesn't mean that it is not useful. It's just that the customer doesn't explicitly know that that's a need. So really focus on the pain points. Focus on what they're struggling with. So let them tell you their story, and you are the ones that need to connect the dots. I always say that. Don't expect your consumers to connect the dots for you. That's your job. That's really your role.
Oh my gosh. I love this podcast. I think it's going to be so valuable for the audience. Chiara, before we conclude with everything, you've got an amazing freebie that you want to give away to the audience. And I know you called this the idea screening criteria, and it walks so well hand in hand with what we've just discussed here today. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about this freebie that they can download from you?
Yes, we were laughing before, but it sounds very corporate, screening criteria. But this is really something that I developed in a former job, and that really was useful for me to rate and score an idea on 4 main criteria, which are desirability, credibility, feasibility, and viability. And you will find in this freebie all the questions. There is 4 or 5 questions for each criteria, which you need to ask, and you need to rate your idea on a scale from 0 to 10. And you will see that a lot of the time you don't have the answer. So that's where you need to go and find the answer on with your customer. This is really where you need to dig into the hopefully all the dialogues that you had with your customers already, or with your avatars, so that you can fill in those screening criteria. So you will have, and this is also really good if you are maybe struggling between 2 or 3 ideas, and you're thinking like, which one should I go first? So if you score each one idea on these 4 criteria, then you can compare ideas with each other and see, okay, this is really scoring better on viability, which is about how much money am I going to make, for instance, versus how much desirability, how much is desired, but it might be more complicated and longer to make, which is then linked to feasibility, how complex it is. Is it for you to do it, to produce it, or to sell it? So really allowing you to compare ideas one with each other, and really decide, okay, I'm going to go with this. This has really a good scoring, and I'm going to then maybe park those other ideas. And you feel more comfortable. You have an objective platform then you can leverage to validate your ideas.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I wish I had that the first time I created my online course and just, put it out there. Nothing happened with it. So for those of you listening, the idea screening criteria will be available down in my show below in my show notes. So the link will be there. Please, please, please go ahead and download it. And then if you would like to get in touch with Chiara herself and learn a little bit more about what she does, or if you have any other questions regarding pre-launching, regarding validating your product, she is the girl to go to. She's got all of those years experience. And honestly, I was just gobsmacked by what she even said today. So many things that I still have to learn as well. And I'm so thankful for her being here. So by all means, go and follow her or get connected with Chiara on her website. The link is also below in my show notes. Chiara, before we say goodbye, is there any last tips you want to give the audience?
No, just learn how to listen. Try it with your partner, try it with your friends, doing really, learn a little bit of coaching and have fun with it. Don't get too anchored, don't get stuck. There's no reason to get stuck. Yeah. This is a beautiful journey. Enjoy every step of it. You're learning. So if you're uncomfortable, you're on the right track.
I love that. Chiara, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for sharing everything here with us. I wish you all of the best, and we will be in touch fairly soon.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Bye.